An honor to be part of this discussion this morning. I have to start out. Kate and I have known each other for a number of years. I think back 2011, 2012, we went through a leadership program together and got a chance to know each other. And we are fortunate enough that Kate is part of Bellwether Supervisory Committee as well. So we're honored to have her serve in that role. And I know the business community in Greater Nashua could not have a better leader during this time than Kate. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Pleasure to be part of it. So I'll just start off, if that's all right, Kate, telling you a little bit about myself, my career, and then what we've experienced the last few months and kind of where we are today and what we're looking forward to over the next few months, the rest of 2020.
That'd be great.
So I am a transplant to New Hampshire. I grew up in the Midwest. I was born and raised in the Green Bay, Wisconsin area, and then spent some time in Northwest Arkansas and Missouri before coming out to Massachusetts after graduating from college. And I went to work for Ford Motor Credit Company for a few years on their consumer lending, auto lending side, did a variety of functions. And they had actually the management training program that I was kind of gearing up for, but it really involved moving and relocating about every 2 years and moving around the country. And for my wife and I, we really wanted to plant some roots and become part of the community and really be involved in the fabric of that community. And so I started to look for another position, and fortunately stumbled into a role here at Bellwether Community Credit Union, and have been here in a variety of roles for over 20 years. Last year, I was named as the incoming CEO and officially have been in that position since October. So that was obviously a large transition. We had some important things to do. We filled a couple of additional slots on our management team that were very important. And then we had really been looking and dissecting our strategic plan for the next 3 years. Where we wanted to go, some new initiatives, and had put a lot of time and work, both with our board and our management team, into that. And really in early 2020 had just rolled out that to our entire team and talked about how we were going to execute on that. And then we transitioned into the COVID experience. So my kind of first inklings of something was going on was I traveled down to Washington, D.C. in late February, and credit union industry has a large conference down there every February. And I was watching a lot of the news reports coming out of China and monitoring those. But a number of credit union leaders and I had a chance to meet with our congressional delegation. And I remember meeting with Senator Shaheen, and she came in and we had a nice conversation, but she had mentioned that she had just come from a briefing on coronavirus, and you could sense the seriousness in her voice. And that was kind of the introduction for me that this was possibly going to become a big deal even here in the U.S. And then got home late in February and started to pay attention to the reports of what was happening in Washington State, and then we began to have a few cases here in New Hampshire. And early in March, I woke up on a Saturday morning and opened the WMUR app and saw that there was a case related to the DMV here in Manchester. And that's where I knew that there was going to be a possible impact with community spread. So I got on the phone and we mobilized our IT team and started making preparations to get people working from home. So we had just an incredible team, kind of worked all throughout the weekend And that next week, early March, we started to move some of our team to a work at home status. So I know for a lot of us as business leaders, March was a blur. Certainly it was here at Bellwether. We worked to get a lot of our back office teams, so our teams that don't work directly with our members, to work from home status. We did that fairly quickly in a matter of weeks. On our branch side, our teams that work directly with our members, we made the decision in mid-March, March 17th, I believe, to close our lobbies except for by special appointments. So we were doing all of our business through our drive-up facilities, which enabled us to still offer a very high level of service, but also protect both our members and our employees by just having that additional distancing between each other. And so we're able to kind of do those transitions very quickly, fairly seamlessly. We've always been a credit union that we've relied on digital channels and technology to be more efficient. And so we had a lot of the underlying foundation in place. It was still a lot of work because we were making transitions and quickly, and obviously trying to absorb a lot of the information that was coming out from the state of New Hampshire and the CDC and others. But really proud of our teams on how quickly we were able to make those transitions, and for the most part, really didn't miss a beat in offering service to our members. That said, those kind of the second half of March and into April, there were a lot of challenges. There was a lot of uncertainty going on in, I think, the public's mind, in the business community's mind on how this was going to impact us. Obviously, the governor declared a state of emergency. And so there was daily, we were getting guidance from the various organizations that regulate the banking and credit union industry, the New Hampshire Banking Department, the National Credit Union Agency. We were getting information on flexibility and how we could treat loan deferments. And so there was just a huge amount of information that our teams were trying to digest. And obviously, our most important goal during all of that was keeping our employees safe, keeping our members safe, but giving our members access to their funds as an essential business. So, it was important for us to that members had access to their funds. In March, we did see, there was some concern by some members of just what was going to happen, and so there were some liquidity questions on would people come in and want to withdraw cash, and so we were preparing for that, and having some discussions with the banking department on what that might entail. So it was just a very, very busy time with a lot of uncertainties in place. There was a couple of things that we did during that time as well that I'm proud of our teams kind of put together. We knew that a lot of our members might be struggling with the uncertainty. And so we put in a number of programs, from emergency loan programs to loan deferment options for our members that might have been impacted directly by COVID-19 in their place of employment. We put in some temporary suspension of some charges to, again, ease the burden, and gave our teams just a lot of flexibility. If somebody was experiencing some impacts from COVID, we wanted to work with them and help them get through that time. But some of those programs we had in place, some of those programs we had to actually build on our systems and test. For instance, deferments on mortgages, and there was some guidance from Fannie Mae, for example, on how those programs needed to work. And so we actually had to build those on our system and test how those would work, and then get those out to our members that needed them. And then obviously towards the end of March, the CARES Act was passed. And with that, there was a lot of implications for financial institutions. So the most obvious one was the Paycheck Protection Program that came out through the SBA. And I think just an amazing job by both the folks at the SBA as well as all of certainly the community financial institutions. SBA is not equipped for this type of program. It's not typically the volume and scale of this type of program was unprecedented. And as one individual from the SBA put it, they were literally building the plane while they were flying it, and we were getting guidance daily on the program and updates and how it was going to work and how we needed to process a loan and information that we needed to pass along to our borrowers. So that was incredibly busy time. We have a small commercial lending team, and they were working literally around the clock on weekends to help our members get access to those funds. So, incredibly proud of our team through that. We were able to help a number of members with that program. And I think you really saw community financial institutions step up and be there. I know for us, we have always taken the approach that we want to be a resource and a consultant. And so that was important. There were a lot of questions from borrowers on how does this program work? How is it forgiveness going to work? And we tried, even with all the things going on, to continue that philosophy and let people, give them resources and let them know how this was going to impact their business and whether or not it was right for them and all the questions surrounding that. So very, very busy beginning of April. Since then, we operated most of April and May with our branches drive up only. We did a lot of changes there. We took some of our teams and moved them to different roles. We saw a lot of volume in our call center with members calling in and doing business with us that way. So we put some additional members of our team on the phone to help with those questions and those calls. Obviously, stimulus funds came in April, and a lot of people had questions on when those were going to come into their account or questions related to that. Really the last few weeks, we have been monitoring the guidance from the governor about reopening. We've been putting a plan together for what reopening would look like for Bellwether. And actually, just this week, we reopened our lobbies for members, and that's going very, very well. And we have brought back a portion of our team back into the office, and with some appropriate safeguards, of course, and are just I think pausing here. This is kind of the end of our first phase, and we'll pause here. We still got some people at home. But overall, things are going well. We really haven't missed a beat with being able to serve our members and give them access to their funds and continue to do a lot of loan business. It's actually been a very interesting time on just changing spending patterns and the demand for loans. We actually thought in end of March and April, we really didn't know what the rest of the year was going to hold. Obviously, there was a pullback in spending due to uncertainty, but we have just seen very, very strong activity on the mortgage side with people purchasing homes as well as taking advantage of ultra low interest rates and refinancing, as well as home improvement, home equity loans, and surprisingly, people still actively buying vehicles and cars and making improvements and taking advantage of really the attractive rates that are out there. So it's just been an interesting time. Obviously, still a lot of unknowns going into the second half of the year, but I think New Hampshire is poised very, very well for where we are, especially compared to other parts of the country. So Kate, I'll pause there for a breath, and I don't know if anybody has any questions or if there's any areas that you want me to specifically kind of dive into a little bit more. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, so I have a couple questions. So, and it is interesting what you talked about with lending. We had Vanessa and Linda from Lovering Auto Group with us on Monday, and we're surprised, or I was surprised at, they talked about how many cars that they have actually been selling during this time, right? They've made different arrangements with test drives and different things like that. But I wondered if, because the housing market has been a little crazy, right? A shortage of inventory, and they talked about how they stocked up on cars, but a lot of dealerships throughout the country have experienced a shortage of inventory. And it makes me wonder, are they somehow related? It seems surprising, right? Again, given all that's going on, it seems a little bit surprising that, people have less maybe job security in some cases, or it's just kind of fascinating. I'm sure for you too.
Yeah, I know we did some reforecast of our budget back in March and April, and there was a lot of unknowns, and we were preparing for some significant slowdowns, and we've seen some of that, but not to the extent that maybe we thought we might. On the auto loan side, I think, as Linda mentioned on Monday, I did watch that conversation. That was a great conversation. New Hampshire didn't shut down their auto dealerships like some of the states around us did. And I think the dealers certainly benefited from that, and consumers did as well. I think there was some attractive incentives going on in March and April. And I think, this has been a very uneven impact. I think there's certain industries that have not been impacted at all. In fact, have been able to grow through this. And then certainly other industries and individuals that have been impacted a great deal. So I think you're seeing some unevenness, but I think there are New Hampshire, especially the housing market, was really, really strong, tight inventory going into this. And that hasn't changed at all. And that's really helped, I think, on the housing side. Although I think everyone's had to get creative on how do you show a house and how do you market a house, and with social distancing and all of that. But I think, I think it just speaks to the innovation, the flexibility, the ability of our business community to kind of pivot and say, hey, we have a set of circumstances we can't change, but how do we still market our business? How do we still let people know we're open and available? And I think New Hampshire has a great track record of doing that. And I think you saw that come through over the last weeks and months.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it impacted everyone for sure, but so differently, right? Like, I mean, you think about IT companies, or even, those that actually manufacture things like laptops. Like, I'm sure that they've just been booming because so many people had to switch to working from home. Even some financial advisors, right? I've heard that they've gained a lot of new clients because I think, people may be thinking about things differently. Is there anything, you talked a little bit about, that some areas did better than maybe you had thought? Are there any that, you thought maybe during this time would be better taken advantage of, or you'd have more people coming forward for that just maybe weren't? I don't know.
Yeah, we actually did an analysis of like spending patterns. Obviously we can see where our members are spending, and we don't look at that at an individual level, but we look at that at an aggregate level. And it was just really interesting from the first few months of the year to what happened in March, April, and May. And you saw this huge shift. So people weren't out and about, and they weren't spending the same way that they had prior. So obviously the obvious ones, hospitality, vacation, cruises, those were way, way off. But then you saw, initially in March, grocery stores, the BJ's and wholesale clubs, Sam's Club, were way, way up. And then as we got into April and May, home improvement stores and, anything to do with your backyard, pools, landscaping, all of that, the spending was up just by a huge, huge amount. But some of those routine things that are part of our life, going to the dentist, doctor's visits, those things were way off. So you really had this shift, and I think some of that's starting to come back. We're starting to see some of the patterns even out, but you're still seeing. I think people are in general, and especially here in New Hampshire, we just have a wonderful state to be able to get outdoors. And so you may not, you may have nixed the plan to go to Florida this year, but you're going to invest in your backyard with a patio set and new landscaping, or in some cases, people are buying, ATVs or boats or something where they can enjoy what New Hampshire has to offer, but it's just closer to home. So yeah, very, very interesting. Probably the two most interesting changes for me is we saw a category of like online sports betting just dry up because there wasn't any sports, not surprisingly, and then really, really strong growth in liquor sales. So I'm not sure what that says about our collective coping mechanisms, but it was very interesting to kind of see those spending changes.
Yeah, I just read an article this week about a local brewery and how they had a better, I think it was April and May than ever before, right? And so, I mean, it was nice that people were supporting local, but it is sort of funny to think about.
Sure.
Think about that. And so I'm curious, I know at Bellwether, right, culture and sort of quality of life for your team is really important. And so this, I'm sure, threw a wrench in that, right? Suddenly this close knit, everybody in person, everybody got spread out and things, there were nerves and unknowns. And so how has that been? What have you been able to do to help keep your team connected and to maintain that continuity?
Yeah, that's been for us the most difficult thing. So we have about 90 employees, a decent sized group, but we're very close, and we try to do regularly things like barbecues and get-togethers and all company meetings and just a chance to connect as a team. And so, not being able to do that during a time where there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change, and people were being impacted at home, and then obviously their jobs were changing at work. Was really difficult. I think we do have just a wonderful group. We have a committee that actually plans and executes just fun activities, as well as some personal wellness activities, and they just stepped up and kind of filled in that void. So there was a connection going on back and forth. We saw, I got a smile so many mornings when some of our remote teams would share a photo from their backyard, or maybe them doing their work with their kids doing their homework off to the side. And so people still were looking and doing a great job of connecting. And I think it was really important. We tried to communicate as well and get emails out there. And recently we've been doing some all-company Zoom calls and just trying to communicate and say, hey, this is where we are. This is what we're thinking about. And just kind of checking in. I know one thing that I tried to do, I didn't, unfortunately, do as much of it as I would have liked, is try to make some personal calls to individuals as well and just check in with them, see how they were doing personally. A lot of us were struggling with, hey, we got kids doing school at home, or this has impacted maybe somebody in our household with their job situation. And so there was a lot of additional kind of stress and anxiety during this time too. So it certainly wasn't the same, and I think that was the hardest for me personally, is just not being able to get everybody in the room and look them in the eyes. But like a lot of other business people, tried to modify that and do the best that we could.
Well, and it's funny, I actually saw one of our fellow leadership Greater Manchester classmates had posted a picture back early on. Her company sent out, and I thought this was brilliant. I thought about doing it, except, we're such a tiny team at the chamber, but they sent out like pizza night kits. And so it looked like it came in a cooler and it was all the ingredients to make your own pizza. And there was dessert in there. And like, so that my guess is all of the employees on whatever it was, maybe a Friday night at home with their families, were all having these pizza nights. Like there's been some really creative things that people have done because, again, I think we're finding new ways, but we're, historically so used to being connected and showing gratitude in, ways that are different than we've been able to during this time.
Yeah, I think, you have to get creative. So this was, I think, especially, I had only been in the CEO role for literally months when this happened. And, I just want to thank the team that we have here at Bellwether, because we've gone through other difficult times together. Obviously, the recession in 2008, 2009, a lot of these things were similar. But I think the challenge was this time is you weren't able to get in a room and put your heads together and look each other in the eyes, and be able to work collaboratively. That's how we're used to working. And doing it remotely is good, but it's more difficult. I found it took more energy to communicate. It took more intentionality to communicate. And, it was really our team, the management team, stepped up and supported the people in their individual teams. We have a wonderful HR team that really supported all of our employees. And I just saw so many examples of people stepping up and kind of taking that leadership on and looking out for their team. And it really goes back to just surrounding yourself with really good people and people that care and want to do a good job. And I saw that at every level of our company. And it certainly made a challenging time easier for me, having that team in place and seeing the way people stepped up and were able to just do really extraordinary efforts in a time that was certainly extraordinary in its own way. So
right, especially right, with kids being home and elderly parents to worry about, right, all sorts of factors, even just outside of the organization. So just a reminder to those who have joined us, if you have a question for Nathan, feel free to put it in the chat box. I know people often will text and send questions other ways, but so I have one for you. I know you've been with the credit union for a really long time. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? Was there something that?
Yeah, great question. I've always loved business. I remember being 13 or 14 and actually kind of in my head designing my own businesses. I actually had when I was in high school, I had my own lawn cutting service, but always really enjoyed business. But believe it or not, I always had this passion or thought in the back of my head that I love to run a summer camp for kids. I had some great camp experiences, and that didn't necessarily work out. But I think that if you could do anything, I think I would love to run a summer camp for kids, because I think you can make such an impact in their lives, and it's such a pivotal time when you're 11, 12, 13, and you get a chance to kind of spread your wings away from home. So that was always something that I guess I didn't aspire to, but I always thought would be a really rewarding career. So.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I have one of my brothers is an attorney, but always wanted to be a gym teacher. It's a similar sort of, like he's in a pretty professional business kind of a job. So what is your favorite part of your job? I mean, I'm sure there's multiple things, but if you could pick, sort of one theme, what do you enjoy most?
Yeah, I think the thing that I enjoy most is I love growing the business, thinking about the future, looking for better ways to do things, better ways to serve members. My undergraduate degree was in marketing, so very much a consumer behavior. How can we make the experience better for our members. So I always kind of gravitate towards that. But I think looking at the strategy and saying where are there some opportunities and how can we grow and position ourselves for the future, I really enjoy that. I found it very rewarding as well to lead a team and to see just empower people to and see them just be able to create a vision and see people kind of step into that and just be able to execute and use their talents to just make that happen. So I think that's been very rewarding. And I think the other thing is in my position, I just get a chance to interact with a lot of organizations in the community. And I've just had my eyes open on just the amazing work that so many nonprofits do in our community. And there are just so many people that are giving back in so many ways. And, until you're exposed to some of that, you just don't realize that there's so much of it going on here in New Hampshire. So that's been very rewarding as well.
Well, and so talking about innovating and pivoting and all of that, I mean, what are you thinking for? I mean, New Hampshire's doing really well, but certainly none of us know, right? Are we going to see some sort of second wave that closes things up for the fall? I mean, and certainly, I don't want to be sort of the negative Nancy, if you will, but you must be thinking about, both from kind of an internal perspective, but, product wise or service wise,
Right.
what are you thinking for the future here?
Yeah, I think the last few months has changed so many of our behaviors in so many ways. I mean, just what we're doing today. I hadn't used Zoom, as of December of last year. So I think we're all learning a lot of things. We've been forced, whether we like it or not, to start doing things more digitally. We've certainly seen that in how our members interact with us. I think Bellwether was well positioned for that. So we have always invested in digital channels, and that has been a primary way that we've been able to offer great member service, but be very efficient and serve members really throughout the state in that way. So, I think there's going to be a lot of consumers that have tried digital channels with their bank or credit union and just realize how easy that is and that they can save time and have a great experience. And I think there will be some certainly that kind of revert back to maybe, seeing people face to face, but I also think those digital channels are going to stick around. I think that positions Bellwether very well because we had invested a lot in that, and that had been one of our primary delivery methods. I also think we're going to see some of those changes in spending. I think we're going to see that stick around for a little while. I think people are realizing that it's investing in New Hampshire and maybe you don't have to go down south for a vacation. There's a lot to do right in our own backyard. We live in a beautiful state that a lot of other people travel to vacation in, and so I think people are going to invest in different ways, and I think so we're going to probably need to adjust for that and say, hey, are we what can we do to help our members invest in their backyard or buy that boat or something like that. So so I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I know one of the things that a lot of companies are talking about, and we've started to have those discussions. We'll have more discussions as well. Is we have had some positions that work remotely and have that flexibility, but we had never planned to have the majority of our back office teams work remotely, and it worked surprisingly well. And for some people, it really improved their job satisfaction, and they were able to get their job done, be more efficient. And so I think that's one of the things that I think we're going to talk about is might that look like? Is it right for us? Is it right for every position? But I think it's worthy of a discussion as well. So I think just a lot of changes in a lot of our businesses, but certainly for us as well.
Yep, very interesting. So we have a question from one of our attendees. So Bellwether Community Credit Union is formerly the Telephone Workers Credit Union. So the question is So have you expanded beyond that industry, and how much growth has there been? Seems like New Hampshire has loads of credit unions and competition must be tough.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, our roots were telephone credit union. We're actually the second oldest credit union in the state. We were founded in 1921 by a group of telephone industry employees. Uh, we have been serving the community, the New Hampshire community, really since 2001. So we've been able to expand quite a bit in New Hampshire. Um, Certainly, our biggest market focus is Greater Nashua area, Manchester area, but we have members really throughout the state, and actually retirees in Arizona and Florida. There are a lot of great credit unions and community institutions here in New Hampshire. I think all of us bring a little bit different value to the marketplace. I think in our case, at Bellwether, we invest in digital channels, as I talked about, but we also try to really deliver service at a very high level. Our members are member owners; they're not customers, and we take that very, very seriously. But there are a lot of financial institutions in southern New Hampshire, and you see some additional financial institutions coming from out of state. So I think that just shows that there's a lot of activity here in New Hampshire. That New Hampshire is a attractive place to be. We've got a strong economy. We've got a lot of positive things going for us. It is certainly competitive, and I think that's a very valid question. But I think, like any business, if you add value to your members or customers, you can carve out a place for yourself. So we're very thankful to be in southern New Hampshire, and very excited to what the future is going to hold for us.
Awesome. So one of my favorite questions, oh, weird little echo. One of my favorite questions. So everyone's job is different, right? Even if you're in the same role, which for you it was a relatively new role, but your job has changed, right? It's just different. And so what have you learned about yourself during this time? Like, what have you sort of discovered about yourself that you maybe weren't aware of before?
Are you specifically talking about like the COVID-19 environment, or just kind
Yeah.
of
So
new leadership?
yeah, so through this sort of challenging, different, unexpected, happened very quickly. I feel like we've all sort of, I think, learned things about ourselves that maybe we didn't otherwise know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The last few months, I think for anybody in leadership, leading a business, leading a team, it has been challenging. You're facing many crises, maybe at home, certainly in your business, trying to respond quickly. I think anytime we're put under stress for a period of time, it reveals some cracks, and you become a little more introspective on your strengths and your weaknesses. And I think I found it shine on some of those for me as well. I think one of the things that I think I was able to do well, obviously others will be able to perhaps comment on that better than me, but I feel like um, the in a crisis, a lot of times decisions need to be made. They need to be made with all the information. You need to make them quickly, and I think I was able to do a good job on that front. The one thing that I think I would have liked to do better than I did was, I think you can't really over communicate during a crisis. And one of the challenges that I really found is just the amount of time in a day to be able to absorb the information, to look at the data that you need to do to make a decision, and then to spend time communicating, in my case, with our board and keeping them informed, with our management team. And then I really wanted to communicate probably more with each individual that worked at Bellwether, and there just wasn't enough time to do all that as much as I would have. And in hindsight, I would have liked to find a way to do that more. but I think it does shine a light on some things that you can do better, but it also, any type of stressful crisis experience, I think it shines some lights on maybe some things that you do well as well. So I think it was a microscope, and I know I'm spending a lot of time saying, okay, you know, as a new leader, what would be some things I would do differently next time, and what were some things that I think I did okay on. So I think for all of us, that's something that we're going to continue to do as we kind of go through this experience. So.
Yeah, I know I've been paying a lot of attention too to how other people have handled it, right? And is there anything I can learn from how this person did something? Or, again, even that silly little, have a pizza night kind of kit, right? I mean, it can be silly little stuff, but things, we've all been just figuring it out as we go. So we do have another question. So in Greater Nashua, there are rural communities like Wilton, Greenville, and Mason. I know Wilton no longer has a bank in its downtown. I see these towns as underserved. Would Bellwether consider serving communities like that as a source of expansion?
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of those type of communities in New Hampshire. Every financial institution looks at their delivery differently. As I mentioned, for us, we're able to serve really the entire state and do it well through digital channels. And we're seeing that consumer behavior is changing. It used to be that you couldn't serve a community without having a branch in that community. And to some extent, that I guess you could still make the argument that there's a place for that. But what we've seen for really the last decade is that people are using the branch differently. They're using it when they have a problem or they want to come in and discuss a more complex transaction, maybe like a mortgage. But for everyday transactions, there's more and more consumers that are, getting their pay by direct deposit or, just want to come in and check their balance, and they can do that with their phone. So we've invested in technologies that allow us to serve every corner of the state very easily. So one of the things that we put in several years ago, we were a front runner in, was being able to close a loan electronically. So consumer loans, someone doesn't even have to come in an office to sign their documents. We can send them securely. They log in, they actually sign them with a digital signature. We've been doing that for years. So, in this type of environment, there was no slowdown in being able to offer consumer loans and have people sign them from the comfort of their home. They didn't have to come in a branch. So we feel like we can still serve those communities in a very active way. It does look different than driving by the branch in some of those communities. But every organization's business model is a little bit different. That just happens to be ours, and it's actually worked well for us.
Interesting. And we're outside of New Hampshire?
We are. We recently got approval to begin to do business in northern Massachusetts, Essex, and Middlesex County. So we're doing some business right there. And really that was a determination. As you well know, the greater Nashua community, people that live south of Nashua or Hollis, or for instance, they don't stop at the border. They a lot of times work in Massachusetts and live in the greater Nashua region or vice versa. And so for us as a credit union, that just enabled us to kind of follow those consumers and be able to serve them holistically, even across the border into north central Massachusetts. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So before we send everybody off on their Fridays, is there anything else that maybe we don't know about Bellwether or isn't widely known that we should know? Is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people may not know is certainly we're talking to a business audience here. There's a lot of great financial institutions here in southern New Hampshire, but Bellwether does offer commercial loans and business loans. We started off serving consumers only, but we've been serving businesses for a decade, and I find just in conversations a lot of a lot of other businesses don't realize that yet about us. So certainly we're proud of the businesses we serve, certainly serve a number of them in the Nashua area, and I'm really proud to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you again for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. I just appreciate, again, the chamber, everything the chamber is doing for businesses in Nashua. It's just been a lifeline. One of the things that I've realized during all of this is just the collaboration and cooperation and how important that is. And that's been with partners like the chamber. For us, it's been with other credit unions and sharing information and how we're making decisions. But that's just been a vital resource for us as a business, and I know for so many other businesses that are members of the chamber.
Great, thank you. Yes, we're always here if there's ever anything that we can do or connections. You know, we've gotten some random questions, and even honestly, I've been helping someone who's been having some issues with their internet service in Nashua. They're not members, but I mean, it's our role to serve the community, right? And so, yes, certainly our loyalty is to those that support us, but we're here as a community partner as well. So, yes, if there's ever anything we can do.
Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for everyone that took part in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. We hope to see all of you again soon. And thanks for being here, Nathan. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Take care.